Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Beerus chosen Deku as his champion? Subscribe if you enjoy the video. And also check the description, so let's begin the story. A cold drizzle shrouded the neon-lit streets of Mizudafu as midnight edged its way into the city. Rain sluiced down cracked sidewalks and darkened concrete, pooling in uneven gutters that the dim streetlights scarcely reached. In the periphery of this urban labyrinth, where the familiar hum of life intermingled with distant sirens, Izuku Midoriya, known to his friends as Deku, walked home alone after a late shift of patrolling a troubled district. The night was heavy with secrets, and the metallic tang of an approaching storm, each raindrop a silent herald of change. Deku's footsteps splashed against puddles, each stride measured and purposeful despite the fatigue weighing on his shoulders. His eyes, normally bright with determination, flickered with a mixture of worry and anticipation. Lately, a subtle restlessness had been growing in him, a gnawing sensation that destiny was rewriting the script of his life. He adjusted the strap of his backpack and pulled his jacket tighter against the chill, every instinct alert to the unusual quiet that blanketed the urban sprawl. At the corner of a deserted intersection, where neon billboards sputtered and faded against the wet pavement, a low, unearthly hum permeated the air. Deku paused mid-step, his gaze shifting upward toward the indigo sky. The hum grew steadily, oscillating in intensity as if an unseen force tuned the very fabric of the night. He blinked, uncertain whether exhaustion had conjured a hallucination or whether something far more profound was unfolding above. In the midst of that ordinary urban night, the heavens seemed to tear open. A crack of lightning, unnaturally brilliant and jagged, revealed a ripple across the firmament. It was as though the cosmos itself had exhaled a breath of raw, celestial energy. The hum crescendoed into a resonant note that vibrated through Deku's bones. His instincts flared, every muscle coiled in readiness for an encounter he had never imagined. A pulsating aura shimmered on the horizon, distorting the rain-soaked cityscape. The ephemeral light cast long, trembling shadows that darted across walls and alleys like specters. Deku's heart pounded in synchrony with the rising hum. His rational mind fought to assert that his fatigue could be deceiving him, yet something primordial urged him forward, beckoning him toward that strange, unworldly glow. Before Deku could register the full scope of the disturbance, a presence manifested. Out of the void, a figure emerged, framed by swirling cosmic luminescence. The newcomer moved with a languid grace that belied an underlying potency, his every step measured, almost disdainful of the human domain he now tread upon. The being's form was both regal and alien, draped in attire that shimmered with hints of ancient power and cosmic dust. The air around him pulsed with an intensity that made the rain seem to pause mid-fall, as if nature itself acknowledged the arrival of a force beyond mortal reckoning. Deku's breath caught in his throat as the figure's eyes, golden, sharp, and inscrutable, swept over him. In that frozen moment, every instinct screamed to flee, yet Deku remained rooted, caught between terror and an inescapable pull of fate. The stranger's gaze did not waver. It pierced through the layers of mortal uncertainty, as if weighing the worth of the soul before him. "Child of a fragile world," the figure intoned, his voice resonant and smooth like a cosmic wind. "Your existence teeters on the brink of destiny and oblivion." Each syllable rolled off his tongue with a deliberate cadence that resonated in the silent spaces between heartbeats. Deku's mind churned with confusion and disbelief. He struggled to steady his voice, managing only a whisper. Who are you?" A slow, almost imperceptible smile curved the stranger's lips. "I am Beerus," he declared with a tone that brooked no argument, the name echoing as if it held power of its own. "And tonight, fate has conferred upon you a purpose that transcends the mundane struggles of heroes and villains." The words hung in the charged air, each one weighted with an authority that was impossible to dismiss. Deku's brain raced to reconcile the enormity of this pronouncement with the simplicity of his own life. An aspiring hero who had fought countless battles only to remain shackled by self-doubt and the limits of human resilience. Now, in this rain-drenched moment, destiny had cast him in a role he had never solicited. A role defined by cosmic forces and the inscrutable whim of a godlike figure. "Champion?" Deku echoed, his tone a mix of incredulity and cautious hope. I'm just a student." "I'm not ready," Beerus interrupted, his voice slicing through the ambient tension like a well-honed blade. "Readiness is a construct of your limited perspective," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Power, sacrifice, and the gravity of choice are not matters of preparation, but of destiny. Your struggle has not been in vain, nor is it merely the clamor of youthful ambition. It is the spark of a force that, once awakened, will reshape the very fabric of this world." The divine words struck Deku with an unsettling clarity. Every hardship, every moment of self-doubt, every trial he had endured as a budding hero converged in this singular, fateful encounter. He felt the weight of unspoken expectations pressing against his chest, constricting his breath. The rain intensified, each droplet now a metronome marking the relentless passage of time, each splash against the pavement a reminder that nothing in this moment was ordinary. In the distance, the city's sirens wailed, a dissonant chorus that underscored the anomaly of the event. The hum in the air deepened, reverberating against the towering buildings like the call of an ancient beast. Deku's mind whirled with questions. What price did destiny demand? What hidden strength lay dormant within him? And what of the world that had only ever known him as a scrappy student striving against odds? Beerus's gaze shifted slightly, as if assessing the chaos of emotions swirling within Deku. "You will not find solace in answers that conform to your past understanding," he remarked coolly. "Your path will diverge sharply from the familiar. I have seen your resolve in the face of adversity. I have witnessed your will to persevere despite overwhelming odds. And now I bestow upon you a mantle, one that is as perilous as it is potent." The cosmic figure's declaration resonated with an almost hypnotic certainty. Deku's pulse thundered in his ears, the cacophony of his racing thoughts drowned only by the relentless beat of destiny that echoed in the rain-soaked night. Every instinct in him urged resistance, yet an inexplicable acceptance began to seep in, a slow, steady trickle that carried the seeds of transformation. "Champion of destruction," Deku murmured, the words tumbling out in a hesitant acknowledgement of the gravity that now defined him. He glanced upward once more, as if searching the tumultuous heavens for a sign of hope or warning. The sky churned with dark clouds and ethereal light, a canvas painted by the hand of fate itself. A gust of wind swept through the street, scattering rain and debris in its wake. Beerus regarded Deku with a detached amusement, his tone shifting to something akin to instruction rather than declaration. "There is little time for reluctance. The world you know is but one stage in a larger theater of cosmic balance. You will be forged in the fires of trial and transformed by the crucible of conflict. Embrace the challenge, and you shall transcend the limitations that have bound you." Deku's gaze faltered as he considered the enormity of the task laid before him. His mind flickered through memories of childhood dreams, the faces of those he'd vowed to protect, and the countless hours spent training at UA. Yet nothing had prepared him for the sudden, jarring collision of cosmic destiny with the mundanity of his daily struggles. "Why me?" he managed to ask, his voice raw with vulnerability and the weight of uncertainty. "I've never asked for this power, for this responsibility." Beerus's response was measured, almost disdainful of the mortal's question. "Destiny selects its vessels indiscriminately. Strength emerges from adversity, and the scars of battle become the emblems of worth. You have been tempered in the fires of hardship, and it is precisely that resilience which has drawn my attention." A long silence followed, punctuated only by the soft patter of rain and the distant echoes of a city too busy to notice divine intervention. Deku's thoughts churned like the storm overhead. Was this power a gift or a curse? Was he destined to become something monstrous in the name of cosmic balance? Or could he uphold the ideals of heroism that he had so long cherished? The tension in the air was palpable, a delicate equilibrium on the verge of shattering. Deku's internal debate played out in the interplay of shadows and light along the slick pavement. Each drop of rain, each flash of distant lightning, bore witness to the silent war waging within him, a battle between the remnants of his old self and the siren call of a destiny he had no choice but to accept. "Deku," Beerus said suddenly, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to draw the final card. The name, spoken in a tone that was both familiar and foreign, reverberated with the inevitability of fate. "This night marks the beginning of a journey that will test you in ways you cannot yet fathom. You must gather your strength, not just for the battles ahead, but for the transformation that lies beyond." The pronouncement sent a shiver down Deku's spine. His heart hammered in his chest as he searched for steady ground amid the swirling torrents of doubt and desire. The rain blurred the boundaries between past and future, each droplet a reminder that time, like destiny, was relentless and unyielding. A sudden roar, a sound not of thunder, but something more primal, ripped through the night, rattling the windows of nearby buildings. The roar mingled with the cosmic hum and served as a grim harbinger. Deku's eyes darted to the source of the sound, his body tensing as he prepared for whatever new threat might be descending upon the already chaotic tableau. Beerus stepped forward, his silhouette etched against the otherworldly glow. "There is no time for hesitation," he intoned. "The tapestry of fate is woven with threads of conflict and sacrifice. You will step beyond the confines of your old life, embracing a power that comes with both tremendous promise and grave peril." Deku's breath caught as he glanced around at the deserted street, now transformed by the interplay of eerie light and ominous sound. Every instinct warned him that the world was shifting beneath his feet, that the calm of the ordinary had given way to an unpredictable storm of destiny. His mind flickered with images of battles yet to be fought, of allies and enemies who would shape his journey in ways he could barely comprehend. "What do I do now?" he asked, the question hanging in the space between them like a fragile plea. His voice trembled, not from fear alone, but from the overwhelming gravity of a future he had no means to control. Beerus's eyes narrowed, and for a moment the divine figure regarded Deku with an intensity that belied the casual cadence of his speech. "You stand at the threshold of change," he said, his tone both matter-of-fact and laden with foreknowledge. "Begin by trusting in the strength that lies within you. Embrace the chaos, the pain, and the beauty of transformation. There is a storm coming, a tempest that will tear through the fabric of your existence and rebuild it anew." A flicker of understanding passed through Deku's mind, a fleeting recognition that every hardship, every moment of doubt, had been leading to this singular point. The cacophony of his internal fears began to harmonize with the cosmic rhythm that now defined his path. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a resolve took shape within him. The uncertainty remained, gnawing at the edges of his consciousness, yet the ember of determination glowed steadily beneath the layers of trepidation. "Very well," Deku murmured, his voice steadier now despite the tumult raging both outside and within. "If this is my destiny, then I will face it head-on. I will learn what it means to be more than just a hero in training." Beerus inclined his head in a gesture that was both approving and enigmatic. "Good. Your journey begins with acceptance, and with the acknowledgement that the true measure of a champion is not found in victory alone, but in the courage to embrace every scar that life inflicts upon you." The divine catalyst's words resonated with a clarity that eclipsed the noise of the storm. For a long moment the two figures, one mortal, one celestial, stood in the rain, each absorbed in the silent communion of fate. The city around them, oblivious to the cosmic decree unfolding on its streets, continued its restless hum, a backdrop of mundane life to a transformation that defied ordinary comprehension. As the rain persisted and the night deepened, Deku took a tentative step forward, his eyes fixed on Beerus's inscrutable form. There was no turning back now. The promise of unimaginable power and the inevitable clash of cosmic forces loomed on the horizon, a specter of both hope and despair. With each step, Deku felt the weight of destiny anchor him to this singular moment, a point where the past dissolved into a future defined by the relentless pull of the divine. "Remember," Beerus intoned as they began to move away from the deserted street, the divine presence leaving a trail of charged air in its wake. "The choices you make from this moment on will shape not only your own fate, but the fate of those around you. The path ahead is fraught with peril, yet it is in facing that peril that true strength is forged." Deku's eyes met Beerus's for a lingering second, a silent pact of shared resolve forged in the crucible of cosmic revelation. The night, once mundane and predictable, now pulsed with the promise of transformation. Each raindrop on the pavement became a testament to the trials to come, each flash of distant lightning a reminder that destiny does not wait for the unprepared. In the final moments before the figure of Beerus receded into the enigmatic glow that had summoned him, Deku found himself standing at the precipice of a new existence. The hum of the celestial energy still vibrated in the air, a constant reminder that the world was no longer the safe haven he had once known. Instead, it was a battleground for forces far greater than any he had encountered. As Deku watched Beerus vanish into the cosmic tapestry of light and shadow, a single thought crystallized in his mind: nothing would ever be the same. The collision of his humble origins with the divine edict would reshape every facet of his being. The choices ahead promised both salvation and damnation, a duality that would force him to confront the very essence of what it meant to be a hero. The rain continued to fall, steady and unyielding, as Deku turned back toward the heart of Muzurifu. The familiar streets now bore an eerie glow under the interplay of neon and residual cosmic light. Every face in the crowd seemed etched with unspoken questions, every passing car a fleeting whisper of impending change. The urban landscape itself appeared to tremble in anticipation of the storm that would sweep across it, both the physical storm and the storm of fate that had been unleashed. In the shadow of a flickering street lamp, Deku paused to catch his breath. He pressed a trembling hand against the cool glass of a storefront, his eyes distant and reflective. "What have I become?" he whispered into the darkness, the words lost in the ambient noise of a city that now teetered on the edge of chaos. A solitary figure, emerging from the gloom of a side alley, approached him. The newcomer's voice was cautious yet piercing. "Are you all right?" the stranger asked, concern etched into every syllable. Deku regarded the man for a moment, a fellow wanderer in a night that had grown too surreal even for the most seasoned citizens of Muzurifu. "Not exactly," Deku replied, his tone edged with a vulnerability that belied his inner turmoil. Something happened tonight. Something I can't even explain." His eyes flicked briefly toward the darkened sky, where the last vestiges of cosmic energy still shimmered faintly. The stranger's gaze softened with empathy, but there was a steely resolve hidden beneath. "Sometimes, the things we can't explain are the ones that change us the most," he said, his words measured and devoid of empty platitudes. "You look like you've seen something that shook the ground beneath you." Deku managed a short, humorless laugh. "You have no idea," he admitted, his voice tight with the realization that he was now entangled in a destiny far beyond his control. The stranger, who introduced himself simply as Takashi, extended a hand. "Come with me. There's a safe place not far from here. You can rest, gather your thoughts, and maybe figure out what this all means." With no other choice but to seek refuge and understanding, Deku accepted the gesture. As they walked together through rain-slicked alleys and past shuttered storefronts, the conversation between them unfolded in hushed tones, each word laden with the promise of revelations yet to come. Takashi spoke of strange occurrences across the city, rumors of unusual energy surges, inexplicable power fluctuations in the night, and whispers among the people that something monumental was unfolding. His voice carried the weight of first-hand experience, tempered by a skepticism born of long familiarity with Muzurifu's undercurrents. "There are things here that defy logic," he said softly as they navigated the labyrinthine backstreets. "And sometimes, logic isn't enough to face what's coming." Deku absorbed every word, the enormity of his encounter with Beerus mingling with the fragmented stories of others who had witnessed the inexplicable. The city, it seemed, was awakening to a reality that had long lain dormant, a reality where the barriers between the mundane and the divine were dissolving. When they reached a small, hidden building that served as a makeshift haven for those caught in the crosswinds of fate, Deku paused at the doorway. The interior was lit by a flickering fluorescent light that barely pushed back the encroaching gloom. Inside, a handful of people huddled together, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and cautious hope. In that quiet sanctuary, the air itself seemed charged with anticipation. Deku's thoughts whirled as he sat on a cold metal chair, the events of the night replaying in his mind like a fragmented film. The celestial encounter with Beerus, the surreal clarity of his words, the crushing weight of destiny, seemed both distant and immediate. Each detail etched itself into his consciousness, promising to shape his path in ways he could not yet comprehend. A quiet murmur of conversation drifted through the room as someone asked, "What did he say, exactly?" The question hung in the air, heavy with the realization that the night had irrevocably altered the course of their lives. Deku struggled to articulate the magnitude of his experience. "He chose me," he finally said, the words barely a whisper. "He said I'm his champion, that I'm destined for something beyond what I ever dreamed." Skepticism and awe danced in the eyes of those gathered. One voice, rough and wary, broke the silence. "Champions aren't chosen, they're made. And if a godlike being is picking sides, then we're all in for a reckoning. The room fell silent again, every soul present absorbing the gravity of the statement as if it were a prelude to a storm. Deku's own resolve began to crystallize amid the swirl of doubt and emerging certainty. The weight of Beerus's words had embedded themselves in his heart, and though fear still lurked in the recesses of his mind, he could not deny the stirring of something powerful and transformative. The journey ahead promised to be treacherous, fraught with perils that would test the very core of his being. Yet within that trepidation lay the spark of a new beginning, a chance to rise above his limitations and embrace a destiny that was as daunting as it was extraordinary. The rain persisted outside, a relentless percussion that underscored the uncertain rhythm of life. As midnight yielded to the earliest hints of dawn, Deku remained seated, lost in thought. He realized that the ordinary world he had known was dissolving before his eyes, replaced by a tapestry of cosmic intrigue and looming conflict. His encounter with Beerus was not an isolated moment. It was the opening salvo in a battle that would define the future of his world. Across the city, the storm gathered strength, and distant thunder rumbled like an ominous promise. Every new sound, every flicker of light outside, seemed to echo Beerus's decree. There was a magnetic pull toward the unknown, a summons that Deku could no longer ignore. He understood that his journey would force him to confront not only external adversaries but also the darkness within himself, a darkness that had been quietly growing, nurtured by every setback and every struggle. As the hours passed, the safe haven offered little respite from the relentless pull of destiny. Takashi's earlier words replayed in Deku's mind. There are things here that defy logic. And sometimes, logic isn't enough to face what's coming. The simplicity of that observation struck him with clarity. His life, once defined by routine and well-worn ideals, had been shattered by a force that transcended ordinary comprehension. Before the first light of dawn could fully claim the sky, Deku rose from his seat, determination etching itself into every line of his face. He stepped out into the early morning drizzle, each droplet a symbol of the cleansing fire that was about to reshape him. The city, still half dreaming in the twilight, carried an undercurrent of unease, a silent acknowledgement that the balance between order and chaos had been irrevocably disturbed. Deku paused at the edge of a rooftop, looking out over the awakening city. The horizon, a muted blend of grays and blues, held the promise of both rebirth and confrontation. In that solitary moment, he allowed himself a fleeting thought of what might have been, the simple life he once led, unburdened by cosmic decrees and divine interventions. But such reflections were ephemeral. The present was charged with a power that demanded action. I won't be the same, he murmured to himself, his voice steady against the soft patter of rain. The realization was both liberating and terrifying, a call to arms that resonated deep within him. Each step he took from that rooftop marked the beginning of a transformation that would soon sweep him up in a torrent of conflict, sacrifice, and hope. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the dissipating clouds, a low, persistent murmur of energy vibrated at the edge of Deku's consciousness. It was a reminder that the encounter with Beerus was not an isolated aberration, but the catalyst for a series of events that would soon engulf the city and ripple outward across the cosmos. The divine proclamation lingered in his mind, a relentless echo. You are my champion, and somewhere in the distance, beyond the familiar borders of Muzurifu, unseen forces stirred in response. The balance of power was shifting, and Deku's destiny was now interwoven with the fate of worlds. Each step he took carried him further away from the safety of his former life and deeper into the storm of a cosmic reckoning. In that fragile moment between night and day, Deku's resolve hardened. His journey had just begun, and the path ahead promised trials that would test every fiber of his being. The uncertainties loomed large, a tempest of conflict, loss, and unexpected alliances. But within that chaos lay the opportunity to forge a hero not defined by the past, but by the choices he would make in the face of destiny. The city awoke with a restless energy, as if it too sensed the approaching storm. And as Deku walked the rain-slicked streets, the whispered promise of transformation echoed in every step. He knew that beyond the familiar alleys and neon reflections lay a future teetering on the edge of cosmic upheaval. A future where every decision, every sacrifice, would shape not only his own fate but that of an entire world. A single question lingered in the quiet spaces between the beating of his heart. How much of himself was he willing to sacrifice to fulfill this divine mandate? And as the first hints of a new day broke over the skyline, Deku could only press forward, each step a silent vow to meet the challenges ahead. In the coming hours, as the city braced itself for the unknown, Deku would have to reconcile the weight of Beerus's declaration with the fragile hope that burned within him. The arrival of the divine catalyst had shattered the illusion of normalcy, leaving behind a trail of questions and a promise of conflict that would reshape the contours of his existence. For now, the rain had ceased, leaving behind glistening streets, and a city suspended between the remnants of night and the uncertain promise of dawn. And as Deku continued his solitary journey, his mind churned with the magnitude of his new reality. A reality where every heartbeat echoed the cosmic decree, and every shadow concealed the potential for both salvation and ruin. The stage was set, and the players had been called to their marks. In the quiet moments before the next chapter of his life would unfold, Deku stood poised on the edge of a precipice. Beyond the veil of darkness, destiny waited with bated breath, its secrets as unfathomable as the cosmos itself. The world was no longer a place of simple certainties. It was a realm where every moment teetered on the brink of transformation, and the next breath might carry the promise of a new era of heroes and horrors. As Muzurifu began to stir in the early light, the silent question echoed through the city's empty avenues. What price would destiny demand, and would Deku have the strength to pay it? The answer lay hidden in the unfolding chaos of the coming days, a mystery that would force him to confront the very limits of his courage, his resolve, and his humanity. And so, with the dawn breaking and the promise of an uncertain future shimmering on the horizon, Deku stepped forward into the rising day, his heart alight with the fire of newfound determination and the lingering question of what lay ahead. The divine catalyst had arrived, and with it, a journey that would forever alter the course of his life and the fate of the world. Deku's footsteps echoed hollowly along the long corridor of UA High as the first uncertain rays of morning seeped through narrow windows. The school, usually abuzz with the promise of youthful ambition and hopeful energy, now bore an eerie silence, a silence that mirrored the tumult raging within him. Every step he took resonated with a heaviness he couldn't quite shake, the memory of Beerus's cryptic decree smoldering in his mind. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and worn leather, remnants of a night that seemed to stretch into a lifetime. In the solitude of the early hours, Deku's thoughts churned relentlessly. The city outside, bathed in the reluctant glow of dawn, carried on unaware of the cosmic weight now pressed against his soul. His encounter with the god of destruction had left more than a mark on his body. It had unsettled the very core of who he believed he was, a protector, a hero molded by self-sacrifice and unwavering resolve. He paused by the entrance, hesitating as if the threshold itself might reveal secrets too dangerous to face. In that moment, memories of Beerus's deep, resonant voice mingled with the murmur of the wind. "You are my champion now." The words reverberated like a curse and a command all at once, their echo swallowing the promise of his once unassailable ideals. Deku pushed open the heavy door, stepping into the foyer where light and shadow danced on the walls. A few early risers milled about, their expressions etched with quiet determination to start another day. Among them, the familiar, reassuring presence of his mentors, figures who had long guided him through the labyrinth of heroism, stood waiting. But today, their eyes flickered with a mixture of concern and disbelief. In the spacious common area, All Might was the first to break the silence. His voice, usually a resounding beacon of optimism, now carried a measured tone that betrayed a deeper worry. "Midoriya," he said, his voice low yet laden with gravity. "I've heard troubling things about what happened last night." The hero's smile, usually as bright as a supernova, was now tempered by worry. Deku's gaze shifted to the man he revered, a man whose booming laughter and grand gestures had once made the impossible seem achievable. But today, All Might's eyes spoke of unspoken truths, secrets too heavy for even a symbol of peace. Deku's throat constricted as he searched for words, the tumult of his experience choking him. "It wasn't like anything I've ever seen," he managed finally, his voice wavering between awe and a creeping dread. "A presence, something beyond our understanding," Aizawa, leaning against a sturdy oak table in the corner, interjected with his trademark dry candor. "Cosmic presences don't just come knocking on our door, Deku. If one does, it usually means trouble is on the horizon. His eyes, dark and incisive, fixed on Deku with a scrutiny that seemed to strip away any pretense. A low hum of tension vibrated through the room as the students and staff exchanged uneasy glances. Even those accustomed to danger found themselves unnerved by the implications of what Deku described. The idea that a being like Beerus could intervene in their world unsettled the established order of heroism, upending a system built on human limits and mortal resolve. Later that morning, as the school's halls began to fill with the familiar clamor of students, Deku retreated to an empty classroom. The space, usually a haven for quiet reflection between classes, now felt like a confessional chamber for the secrets he carried. He sank into a worn chair, the cold metal biting into his skin as he stared out the window at the awakening city. The rising sun seemed to illuminate not hope, but rather the stark realities of destiny that were now entwined with his own. In the solitude of that room, thoughts collided with memories. Images of the blazing cosmic energy, the surreal spectacle of a deity descending into their reality, and the harsh pronouncement that had altered his fate replayed relentlessly. His heart pounded with the cadence of dread and anticipation, each beat a reminder of the irreversible path he had been forced onto. I've been chosen. But by whom? And for what purpose? The questions spiraled, each one more unyielding than the last. He recalled the softness in Beerus's tone, the almost indifferent declaration that hinted at sacrifices and transformations that lay far beyond the realm of ordinary heroism. In the quiet of the classroom, Deku allowed himself to wonder if accepting this path might mean sacrificing the very ideals that defined him. A sudden rap on the door jolted him from his introspection. A small envelope, sealed with the UA insignia, lay on the table, its presence as unexpected as the cosmic decree itself. He opened it with trembling fingers, revealing a handwritten note from his homeroom teacher. The note requested his presence in the principal's office at once, a summons that carried an unspoken urgency. Deku's hand trembled as he folded the note, slipping it into his pocket along with the weight of his secret. With one last glance at the sprawling city below, he rose from the chair, leaving behind the fleeting comfort of solitude and stepping once more into the uncertain corridors of UA High. The principal's office was a room of austere elegance, the walls lined with accolades and photographs of past heroes. Today, however, those symbols of past glory served only to heighten the surreal reality of his present predicament. Principal Grantham, a man known for his stern pragmatism and unwavering dedication to the school's ethos, awaited him behind a polished oak desk. Midoriya. The principal began without preamble, his tone measured and grave. We've been hearing rumors, unsettling ones. Rumors of an encounter that defies explanation. His fingers drummed lightly on the surface of the desk, each tap punctuating the unspoken tension in the room. Deku swallowed hard, his throat parched. I experienced something last night. Something that I can't explain. His voice was low, laden with a burden that seemed too vast to be contained in mere words. Grantham's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. Explain it then. Do not withhold any details. In these times, omissions can be dangerous. His insistence was not born of mere protocol but of a deep-seated fear that the forces at play could unravel the delicate fabric of their world. As Deku recounted the night's surreal events, the blinding flash of cosmic light, the unyielding voice that declared his fate, the overwhelming sensation of being thrust into a destiny not of his own making, the principal's expression shifted between skepticism and concern. Each word seemed to peel back layers of a secret that lay just beyond the grasp of mortal understanding. You must understand, Deku continued, his voice steadying as he pushed through the initial tremors of fear, that I feel changed. The encounter has left me questioning everything. My strength, my purpose, even the nature of heroism itself. His gaze fell to his clasped hands, knuckles white with the effort of containment. Grantham sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. The responsibilities of a hero are not without their burdens, Midoriya. Yet, if you have indeed been touched by a power so foreign to our world, we must proceed with caution. Your training, your mentors, All Might, Aizawa, they need to know the full extent of what you've experienced. A brief pause stretched between them, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Deku's eyes flickered with an inner fire, a blend of determination and uncertainty. I'm not sure what to do next. I can't just ignore this. It's as if destiny has forced me onto a path I never chose. His words carried the weight of a man torn between the call of the extraordinary and the comfort of the familiar. Later that day, in the dimly lit corridors of the school, Deku found himself huddled with a small group of classmates in a secluded nook. The chatter around him was subdued, the usual banter replaced by cautious whispers. Uravity, with her steady gaze and calm demeanor, broke the silence. Izuku, you've been off lately. We all notice it. Talk to us if you need to. Her voice, soft but resolute, cut through the oppressive atmosphere. He managed a wan smile, though it lacked its usual warmth. I'm dealing with a lot. It's hard to explain. The admission, bare and unadorned, hung in the air like a fragile truth waiting to be scrutinized. A murmur of agreement passed among them, a silent pact of understanding forged through shared hardships and unspoken fears. Though they did not fully grasp the cosmic implications of his experience, the sincerity in his tone was enough to cement their loyalty. Yet, the conversation veered quickly back to the mundane preparations for classes, leaving Deku alone with his turbulent thoughts once more. As dusk crept over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and smoldering red, Deku sought refuge in a quiet corner of the school's training grounds. The vast expanse, normally filled with the energetic shouts of aspiring heroes, now served as a solitary arena for his inner battle. Each breath he drew was measured, deliberate, a feeble attempt to regain control over emotions that threatened to spill over. The twilight hour offered little comfort. Shadows stretched long and distorted across the ground, mirroring the contortions of his own doubts. In the silence, he allowed his mind to wander freely, retracing every moment of the previous night, dissecting every word of Beerus's proclamation. The dialogue replayed with an almost tangible clarity, as if the memory itself were a living entity urging him to heed its warning. He knelt by a weathered bench, running his fingers along its splintered edge. The wood was cold, a stark reminder that some forces were indifferent to the warmth of human emotion. "Why me?" he murmured into the gathering dark. The question echoed against the stone walls, unanswered and unsettling. In the recesses of his thoughts, images flickered, a montage of battles fought with unwavering resolve, moments of quiet triumph and painful loss. Each recollection now bore the unmistakable stain of that night's encounter. The power within him felt both alien and intoxicating, a force that promised strength yet threatened to erode the very essence of who he had been. A sudden sound, the clack of footsteps on gravel, brought him back to the present. Deku straightened, alert and cautious. He peered into the dim light, and caught sight of a familiar figure approaching. Aizawa, his mentor whose stern countenance rarely betrayed any hint of softness, had found him in the solitude of the training grounds. "Midoriya." Aizawa's voice was quiet, yet every word carried the weight of unspoken concern. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Deku managed a weary smile. "I needed some space to think. There's so much I don't understand." His admission was bare, stripped of any pretense of bravado. Aizawa studied him, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "Understanding doesn't always come from isolation. Sometimes you need to confront these demons head-on. Hiding in solitude might only magnify the uncertainty." They walked side by side along a narrow pathway, the world around them dissolving into a tapestry of muted colors and soft shadows. The silence between them was not empty. It was filled with the quiet intensity of mutual understanding and the recognition of burdens too great for words alone. "Do you believe in destiny, Deku?" Aizawa asked abruptly, his tone matter-of-fact yet tinged with a curiosity that belied his usual stoicism. Deku's gaze shifted upward, where the first stars still clung to the retreating night sky. "I used to think destiny was something forged by our choices. But now, it feels like everything I've known has been upended. I'm caught between who I was and who I might become." His voice, though soft, vibrated with an inner turbulence that demanded acknowledgement. Aizawa paused, weighing his next words with care. "Power always comes with a cost. If something has shifted inside you, you need to be aware of its implications. Not just for you, but for everyone around you." The mentor's eyes held a stark intensity, a silent warning that the path ahead would be as unforgiving as it was transformative. Their conversation lingered in the cool night air as they reached a quiet clearing near the training area's edge. Here, The distant hum of the city mingled with the nocturnal chorus of crickets, crafting a soundscape that was both soothing and ominous. Deku's heart thudded in time with the quiet rhythm of nature, a reminder that life, in all its fragility, persisted even in the face of cosmic aberrations. Aizawa's gaze swept across the horizon, as if he too could sense the disturbance beyond the stars. There are forces at work that we cannot yet comprehend. I've heard whispers, rumors that the balance of power in our world is shifting. This isn't just about you, Deku. It could be the harbinger of something much larger. His words cut through the night like a shard of ice, leaving Deku with a deep-seated unease that settled over him like a shroud. As the conversation dwindled, Deku's mind raced through possibilities, each one darker and more uncertain than the last. Was Beerus's choice a random act of cosmic intervention, or was it a calculated move in a game whose stakes transcended human comprehension? Every question birthed another, spiraling into a labyrinth of doubts and fears that left him grasping at fragments of clarity. Back at the dormitory that night, Deku lay awake on a narrow cot, the ceiling a canvas for the restless shadows of his thoughts. He turned over in bed, trying to drown the persistent murmurs of his inner voice with the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. But sleep eluded him. Instead, his mind replayed the cryptic dialogue with Beerus, each syllable resonating like a ticking clock counting down to an inevitable reckoning. In the silence of the night, Deku whispered to himself, "What have I become?" The question was not rhetorical. It was a plea for understanding, a desperate search for a lifeline in the swirling chaos of destiny and doubt. As the hours dragged on, the dormitory's ambient noises, the soft rustle of sheets, the distant murmur of other students, served only to underscore his isolation. Even in a building teeming with life and dreams, he felt marooned in a vast ocean of uncertainty. The cosmic encounter, the weight of the divine decree, had set him adrift from the familiar shores of his former self. Morning finally crept in, its light unyielding and clinical as it bathed the world in a stark, unvarnished truth. Deku rose with a heavy heart, the memory of the night's restless vigil etched into every fiber of his being. The corridors of UA, now filled with the clamor of a new day, offered little solace. Every face he passed seemed to hold a mirror up to his own troubled soul, reflecting back a myriad of unasked questions and unvoiced fears. In the bustling cafeteria, where laughter and conversation typically mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, Deku sat alone at a corner table. His tray, laden with the day's modest fare, went mostly untouched. His mind, however, remained ensnared in the grip of destiny, a relentless reminder of the cosmic encounter that had forever altered his path. It wasn't long before All Might joined him at the table, his presence a stark contrast to the subdued atmosphere. "Izuku," he began, choosing his words with the care of a seasoned mentor. "There is a storm on the horizon. I see it not just in the skies, but in your eyes. You carry a burden that no young hero should bear." His tone was not reproachful, but it bore the unmistakable weight of someone who had seen the cost of power firsthand. Deku looked up, meeting All Might's steady gaze. "I feel as though I'm standing on the edge of an abyss. I'm not sure if I can step back, or if I'm destined to fall." His admission was raw, stripped of any attempt to mask his vulnerability. All Might nodded slowly, his expression somber. "Every hero faces a turning point, Izuku. Some moments define us, for better or worse. But you must remember, strength isn't measured by the absence of fear, but by the courage to confront it." The words, though intended to comfort, resonated with a bittersweet irony. For every ounce of reassurance, Deku felt the gnawing doubt that perhaps this power, this unearthly charge, might eventually erode the very essence of his humanity. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Aizawa, who had come to join them unannounced. "There are discussions among the faculty," he stated flatly, "regarding the events of last night and their implications. We need to consider all angles before making any decisions." His gaze swept the table, lingering briefly on Deku. "Your experience isn't isolated, Midoriya. It may very well be the tip of an iceberg that we're only beginning to comprehend." Deku's fingers drummed against the table as he absorbed Aizawa's words. The mention of an iceberg sent a chill through him, an omen that the forces stirring beyond their world were vast and unfathomable. "What are you implying?" he asked softly, the question heavy with both curiosity and dread. Aizawa's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm implying that we are on the cusp of encountering threats that defy our current understanding of heroism. If a cosmic force has singled you out, it may not be an isolated incident but a precursor to events that could reshape our entire world. His voice was deliberate, each word measured to instill both awareness and urgency. The table fell into a heavy silence, the gravity of Aizawa's implications sinking in like a leaden weight. The room, once a sanctuary of familiar comfort, now felt like a crucible of foreboding revelations. Even the clatter of dishes in the distant cafeteria seemed muted, overshadowed by the stark reality that destiny was no longer an abstract concept but an ever-present specter looming over their lives. As the day wore on, the discussions among faculty and students grew increasingly charged. Whispers circulated through the corridors, murmurs of cosmic phenomena and inexplicable encounters that defied conventional explanations. In hushed tones, some speculated that the universe was tipping into chaos, while others clung to a cautious optimism that the very nature of heroism might evolve to meet these new challenges. In a quiet conference room later that afternoon, All Might and Aizawa convened with several senior instructors. The discussion was intense, marked by a palpable undercurrent of urgency. Aizawa's tone was unyielding as he addressed the assembled group. We must be prepared for the possibility that we are dealing with forces that extend beyond terrestrial threats. Our training, our strategies, they might prove inadequate in the face of such cosmic disturbances. One of the instructors, a veteran hero whose scars bore testament to battles fought on the front lines, leaned forward. Are we suggesting that our understanding of heroism is obsolete? That we're stepping into a realm where conventional wisdom has no bearing? His question, laced with skepticism, hung in the air. All Might's response was measured, his booming voice tempered by a gravity that mirrored the situation. It is not a matter of obsolescence, but of evolution. Our duty as heroes is to protect and serve, even when the very fabric of reality is challenged. This is a call to adapt, to find strength in the face of unprecedented change. His words, delivered with the conviction of one who had weathered countless storms, resonated deeply with those present. Back in his room that evening, Deku sat at his desk, a single lamp casting long shadows across stacks of textbooks and scattered notes. Yet his focus was not on the lessons of heroics he'd studied for years, but on the enigmatic power that now simmered within him. He opened a worn notebook, its pages filled with sketches of heroic feats and diagrams of combat techniques, a testament to the journey he had always envisioned. Now, those pages seemed inadequate to capture the enormity of what lay before him. His pen hovered over the paper, hesitating as he struggled to translate the tumult of his thoughts into coherent words. What if I lose myself to this power? He wondered, the question slicing through his concentration. Each stroke of the pen was an attempt to map the uncharted territory of his destiny, yet the more he wrote, the more elusive the truth became. A memory surfaced, an image of Beerus's inscrutable gaze and the echo of his words. That memory, both mesmerizing and terrifying, pulsed with a life of its own, challenging everything Deku had ever believed about the nature of strength. I am more than just a hero in training, he mused silently. I am a vessel for something larger, something that demands both sacrifice and transformation. The thought was as exhilarating as it was paralyzing. In the days that followed, Deku's inner world became a battleground of conflicting desires and fears. Each interaction with his peers and mentors was underscored by the invisible struggle to reconcile the promise of newfound power with the steadfast ideals of his past. During training sessions, every punch thrown and every maneuver executed was tinged with a hesitancy, a subconscious question of whether the cost of his potential greatness might be too steep. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the leaves danced in a restless wind outside the training arena, Deku found himself paired with a fellow student for a sparring session. The rhythmic thuds of fists meeting padded targets filled the air, but beneath the surface of routine drills, Deku's movements carried a weight that was unmistakable. His strikes, though precise and formidable, were measured by the constant reminder of the divine mandate etched into his memory. His partner, a bright and enthusiastic young hero known for his unyielding positivity, noticed the subtle shift in Deku's demeanor. Midoriya, you're off your game today. Everything all right? He asked between breaths, genuine concern threading through his voice. Deku paused, his eyes flickering with the internal storm that threatened to overwhelm him. I'm just trying to figure something out, he replied evasively, not ready to divulge the true nature of his burden. The response, though brief, carried a tremor of vulnerability that was hard to miss. After the session, as they rested in the cool shade beneath a sprawling oak tree, Deku finally confided in his sparring partner, a trusted friend who had seen him through countless challenges. I had an encounter last night, he began cautiously, his eyes darting around to ensure no one else was listening. Something beyond our world. It changed me. I'm not sure if I'm still the same person I was before. His friend's brow furrowed as he processed the revelation. You mean like a supernatural encounter? He ventured, his tone a mix of incredulity and concern. Deku nodded slowly. I don't fully understand it myself. It's like I've been given a power that's both a gift and a curse. I can feel it stirring inside me, a force that's greater than anything I've ever known. And it scares me. His admission was raw, devoid of theatrical flair, but brimming with genuine apprehension. The conversation drifted into a reflective silence, punctuated only by the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of the training grounds. For a moment, in that shared space, the weight of destiny felt less oppressive, a burden split between two who understood the delicate balance between hope and despair. That evening, as twilight bled into the horizon, Deku found himself on the rooftop of his dormitory. The city sprawled beneath him like a living mosaic of lights and shadows, each flickering window a silent testament to the lives unfolding in parallel to his own. He leaned against the cool metal of the parapet, allowing the night air to seep into his bones. High above the din of everyday existence, he gazed upward at the emerging stars, trying to decipher the cosmic patterns that now dictated his fate. The constellations, once mere decorations in the night sky, seemed to pulse with an urgency that mirrored his inner conflict. Every star, every distant glimmer, was a reminder that he was part of a universe vast and indifferent, a universe that had just entrusted him with its most dangerous secret. In that moment of introspection, a single thought crystallized. Destiny was no longer a gentle guide but a relentless force, unyielding, inscrutable, and fraught with peril. The gentle cadence of his heartbeat, once a comforting rhythm of youthful dreams, now pounded with the urgency of a warning. He clenched his fists, as if to anchor himself against the overwhelming tide of fate. I have to find a way to control this, he resolved silently. If I lose myself, if this power consumes me, then I will have doomed not just me, but everyone who depends on me. The determination in his eyes hardened as he stared into the night, a silent vow forming in the depths of his troubled soul. The next morning, as the campus slowly awoke to another day of training and lessons, Deku felt a tenuous resolve mingling with the lingering fear. His steps were more deliberate, each one a quiet rebellion against the uncertain currents of destiny. He sought out his mentors again, this time determined to confront the enigma that had taken root within him. In a quiet meeting room adjacent to the faculty lounge, Deku sat across from All Might and Aizawa, his posture tense yet resolute. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the room itself held its breath in expectation of the truths that would soon be unveiled. All Might, Aizawa, Deku began, his voice firm despite the tremor of uncertainty. I need to understand what this means, for me, for all of us. I feel this power surging inside me, and it's changing the way I see everything. I'm scared that if I don't learn to control it, it will control me. Aizawa's gaze was steady, his eyes reflecting the weight of a man who had seen far too much. Control is not something that can be demanded, he replied slowly. It must be earned through understanding and discipline. What you experienced is not a gift to be taken lightly, it's a responsibility, and perhaps a test of your character. His words, though blunt, carried a sincerity that cut through Deku's inner tumult. All Might placed a comforting hand on Deku's shoulder, his voice gentle yet imbued with the strength of conviction. Your path has always been fraught with challenges, Izuku. This, too, is a trial, a moment that will define the future of your heroism. Embrace it, but do not let it define you entirely. His advice was a lifeline, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was a way forward if one held true to their principles. As the meeting drew to a close, Deku felt a flicker of hope amidst the swirling chaos of uncertainty. Yet, even as he absorbed the counsel of his mentors, an undercurrent of foreboding persisted, a quiet whisper that something larger was at play. The very cosmos seemed to conspire in silence, hinting at events that would soon ripple through the fragile peace of their world. That night, as Deku walked the quiet halls of UA, his mind bristled with questions and half-formed strategies. Every step resonated with the tension of impending change, each shadow along the corridor a silent sentinel to the secrets that lay just beyond reach. He passed by familiar classrooms, each one a repository of memories and lessons, now imbued with a newfound significance that hinted at the extraordinary. Outside, the chill of the night was punctuated by the distant hum of activity, voices carried on the wind, hints of discussions about recent events. It was as if the school itself was alive with whispered speculations about cosmic interventions and the fragile balance of power. Deku's pace quickened, driven by an instinctive need to uncover the truth behind his transformation before it spiraled further out of control. He paused at the edge of the schoolyard, where the urban landscape met the encroaching wilderness. The boundary was marked by an ancient oak whose gnarled branches reached skyward like desperate hands. Beneath it, a solitary figure waited, a student whose quiet presence belied a keen insight into the unspoken fears of their generation. "Midoriya," the student said softly, the voice both cautious and reassuring. "I've heard things. Rumors that something significant is happening. Do you think it's related to what you experienced?" The question hung in the air, raw and unfiltered, a plea for connection amidst the chaos. Deku regarded the student, his eyes reflecting the inner storm of emotions he struggled to contain. "I'm not sure," he admitted. "But whatever it is, I can feel it stirring, an undercurrent of change that might engulf us all if we're not prepared." The words were measured and honest, a quiet acknowledgement of a burden shared by those who dared to glimpse the extraordinary. The conversation drifted into a reflective silence, the night around them filled with the promise of revelations yet to come. As they parted ways, Deku felt the weight of destiny pressing ever harder upon him, a reminder that every choice, every encounter, would now carry the gravity of the cosmos. In the solitude of his room that night, Deku sat at his desk once more, the glow of a single lamp casting long shadows across scattered notes and textbooks. He stared at a blank page, the emptiness a mirror to the uncertainty that clouded his future. The pen in his hand trembled as he poised it above the paper, a silent challenge to the chaos within. "I must write my own destiny," he resolved silently, his thoughts coalescing into a fragile plan, a blueprint for the battles ahead, both internal and external. Every word he wrote was an act of defiance against the inexorable pull of fate, a promise that no matter how overwhelming the power bestowed upon him, he would remain true to the hero he had always aspired to be. As the midnight hour approached, the quiet hum of the building and the distant murmur of the city outside served as a somber backdrop to his reflections. In that quiet moment, Deku recognized that he was standing at the precipice of an era defined by cosmic upheaval and personal transformation. The choices he made in the coming days would not only determine the course of his own life but might well influence the balance of a world teetering on the edge of extraordinary change. The weight of destiny pressed down upon him, a constant companion in the silent darkness. And though fear clutched at his heart, a spark of determination began to burn, small yet resilient, in the recesses of his soul. The night stretched on, filled with the promise of an uncertain tomorrow, and in that uncertainty lay the seeds of a future that would demand both sacrifice and the courage to confront the unknown. In the days ahead, whispers would grow louder, and the cosmic currents would churn with increasing intensity. Deku knew that he was not merely a bystander in this unfolding drama. He was at its very center, a linchpin upon which the fate of heroes and the fabric of reality itself might depend. And as he prepared to face the inevitable challenges of a destiny that seemed both terrifying and exhilarating, one truth remained undeniable. The path before him was fraught with peril, but also with the potential for greatness beyond measure. Even as he closed his notebook and extinguished the lamp, the echoes of tonight's revelations reverberated in his mind. The next chapter of his life was about to begin, a chapter where every step would be a testament to the strength of his convictions and the resilience of the human spirit. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the cosmos, forces unknown stirred, waiting for the moment when the weight of destiny would finally come to bear. As Yue settled into the quiet lull of night, Deku lay awake once more, his eyes fixed on the ceiling as if searching for answers in the patterns of light and shadow. The weight of destiny was real, tangible, and inescapable. And though the journey ahead promised to be arduous and uncertain, he could no longer turn away. The quiet stirrings of that cosmic decree had set a chain of events into motion, a chain that would inexorably lead him toward a confrontation with forces that transcended the very boundaries of human understanding. In that silent, watchful darkness, Deku's resolve hardened. Tomorrow, he would face not only the challenges of training and heroic duty, but the profound implications of being chosen as the champion of a power beyond mortal ken. The path ahead was shrouded in mystery, its twists and turns marked by both promise and peril. And as the first light of dawn began to edge into the sky, a subtle sense of suspense threaded through the stillness, a quiet prelude to the storm that was coming. The universe, indifferent and vast, had spoken. And in its cryptic, relentless way, it had entrusted Deku with a destiny that was both a burden and a beacon. With every heartbeat echoing the weight of that calling, he prepared himself for the trials yet to come, trials that would test not only his strength as a hero but the very essence of his soul. Tomorrow, he vowed silently, I will begin to understand what it means to carry this power, and what it means to bear the weight of destiny. In that vow lay the promise of a new chapter, one that would push him to the edge of his limits and force him to confront the mysteries of a universe that had suddenly become all too real. And as the day broke, casting its pale light over Yue High, the stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything he once believed about fate, heroism, and the price of true power. The tension of that day lingered like a shadow, and every conversation, every whispered rumor among the halls of Yue, hinted at the brewing storm. The world was shifting, and Deku was at its epicenter, caught between the promise of a destiny written in the stars and the harsh reality of the path he must now walk. The coming days would reveal whether the strength within him could indeed be forged into the power needed to protect those he held dear, or whether it would ultimately consume him, leaving only the echo of a once bright hope amid the relentless churn of destiny. As the chapter of his old life closed, the weight of destiny pressed ever more firmly upon Deku's shoulders, beckoning him toward the unknown with a mixture of terror and allure. And though he walked the familiar corridors of Yue with cautious steps, every fiber of his being resonated with the promise, and the threat, of a future that could reshape the very nature of heroism itself. In the shifting light of dawn and the quiet murmur of the waking campus, one truth stood clear: the journey ahead would be neither simple nor forgiving. The cosmic decree that had chosen him as its champion was just the beginning. The true test lay in the choices he would make, the battles he would fight, and the sacrifices he would have to endure. Deku's eyes, determined and haunted, flickered with a fierce inner light. The storm was coming, and with it, the promise of answers, and of challenges that would demand every ounce of his strength. The weight of destiny was no longer an abstract concept. It was an ever-present reality that would shape every moment of his life from this day forward. And so, as the campus stirred to life and the first echoes of a new day filled the air, Deku stepped forward, prepared to face the uncertain horizon. The next chapter of his journey beckoned, shrouded in mystery and fraught with danger, a challenge that would test the very limits of what it meant to be a hero in a world on the brink of cosmic change. What awaits me out there? He wondered, the question lingering in the morning air like a promise and a threat. Only time would reveal the full measure of his destiny, and whether he could, in the end, rise to the call of a power far greater than himself. The night's reflections faded into the dawn, but the memory of that divine encounter remained etched in Deku's soul. The promise of a new, uncertain era loomed on the horizon, and with it, the relentless pursuit of truth amidst the chaos of fate. As Yue High filled with the sound of footsteps and murmurs of determination, the stage was set for the next act in this unfolding saga. A confrontation with forces that would redefine heroism and challenge the very notion of destiny. With the rising sun casting long shadows across the campus, Deku embraced the day with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. The weight of destiny, though oppressive and enigmatic, was now a part of him, a constant reminder that his journey had only just begun, and that the path ahead would demand everything he had to give. The suspense hung in the air, as palpable as the morning mist, promising that soon the hidden truths of the cosmos would come crashing into the realm of human endeavor. And as Deku set forth into that uncertain day, his heart beat with the fierce determination of a hero who knew that every step, every choice, would shape the future of not only his own life but the very fabric of the world around him. A deafening silence fell as Deku's vision blurred into a cascade of shifting lights. One moment, he was standing on the rain-soaked streets of Mizurufu. The next, he found himself on a jagged plateau suspended in a twilight realm. The ground underfoot split into angular shards of obsidian and rusted metal, jutting upward like the remnants of a collapsed civilization. Overhead, a churning sky reflected the fury of distant, unseen storms. It was here that Beerus had chosen to begin his tutelage. Deku's heart hammered in his chest as he surveyed the barren expanse. The air tasted metallic, charged with an energy that threatened to ignite every particle around him. He swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the imposing figure lounging on a crystalline boulder at the center of the arena. Beerus's posture was languid, yet every muscle exuded latent power. His purple skin shimmered with an ethereal glow, and his eyes, sharp and unyielding, roamed the desolate landscape as if assessing every threat. Without a word, Beerus snapped his fingers. In an instant, the ground trembled and fragmented into countless shards that rose and spun around Deku like a violent maelstrom. The god of destruction's voice cut through the swirling chaos. "Begin," Beerus commanded, his tone devoid of sentiment yet heavy with expectation. Deku's throat constricted. He steadied himself, summoning the resolve he had nurtured through years of disciplined training at UA. He clenched his fists. "Yes, Lord Beerus," he replied, his voice steady despite the fear twisting in his gut. Beerus's eyes narrowed, studying the young hero's posture, his expression inscrutable. "Your power lies dormant, boy. Today, I'll strip away your hesitations until nothing remains but raw potential," he said, his tone measured and deliberate. The air crackled as the god of destruction stepped down from his pedestal and circled Deku slowly, each step echoing like a metronome in the silence. Deku's mind whirled with questions. Was this a test of strength? Of spirit? Or a lesson in the sacrifices demanded by such overwhelming power? A sudden roar shattered the stillness. The rocky plateau split apart beneath them, and torrents of flame erupted from fissures in the earth. Deku instinctively braced himself as the searing heat licked at his skin. Beerus's lips curled into a semblance of a smile, thin and unsettling. "Feel the heat, Deku. This is but the beginning of your baptism," Beerus said, his voice both mocking and instructive. The flames danced around Deku, their tongues licking his limbs. He struggled to control the surging energy within him, focusing on the countless hours spent mastering his quirk and refining his control over his physical form. Slowly, he let his instincts guide him, allowing the raw energy from the flames to seep into his core without overwhelming him. Every muscle in his body strained as he absorbed the heat, a searing intensity burning away his self-doubt. The flames, though brutal, became a catalyst, a means to unlock the potential that lay hidden behind his fear. Sweat poured down his face as he concentrated, his eyes closing briefly as he embraced the scorching pain. A guttural chuckle emerged from Beerus as he observed Deku's transformation. "Impressive. You endure even when the inferno threatens to consume you," Beerus remarked, his tone both approving and merciless. "But endurance is only the first step. Now push beyond it." At that moment, the ground beneath Deku convulsed violently. Massive boulders erupted from the fissures, hurtling toward him with destructive force. Deku reacted instinctively, his body moving with a speed that belied his inexperience. He dodged the lethal projectiles, every sinew straining to anticipate their unpredictable paths. The sound of rock grinding against rock reverberated around him, punctuating the clash of nature and willpower. "Your agility is commendable," Beerus observed, his voice echoing over the tumult. "But raw speed alone will not save you when the enemy is your own limitations." Deku's eyes flashed open as he sidestepped yet another boulder. I must do more," he panted, determination rising in his tone. His voice broke with effort, each word a testament to his struggle. He closed his eyes for a moment, reaching deep within himself. He remembered the countless hours in training halls, the mantra of perseverance drilled into his very soul by his mentors at UA. In that moment, a subtle shift occurred within him. A distant ember of potential ignited into a roaring blaze of determination. He lifted his head, scanning the chaos with renewed clarity. Deku's movements became more deliberate, each dodge and counter-movement blending instinct with refined technique. He anticipated the boulder's trajectories, weaving through the barrage with a grace that bordered on artistry. The air around him vibrated with the ferocity of his spirit. Beerus's smirk widened as he regarded Deku's progress. "You learn quickly," he noted, his voice carrying a mix of amusement and challenge. "Now, let's see if you can harness that energy offensively." With a single gesture, Beerus summoned a sphere of pulsating cosmic energy that hovered between his outstretched fingers. The sphere's surface shimmered with hues of violet and crimson, its core radiating an almost tangible menace. "Concentrate, Deku. Mold your power. Let it serve you rather than overwhelm you," Beerus instructed, his tone deliberate, each syllable a command. Deku's brow furrowed as he reached out, attempting to mirror Beerus's control over the raw energy. He clenched his fists tightly, focusing on the searing heat and the swirling power that resonated from the cosmic sphere. At first, nothing happened except a flicker of light dancing at his fingertips. Then, as he persisted, the light coalesced into a flickering orb of his own, a pale, trembling beacon against the overwhelming darkness of the arena. He felt his power surge, turbulent and unrefined, yet unmistakably his. With a burst of effort, he directed the orb forward. It pulsed hesitantly before exploding into a cascade of energy, shattering a nearby outcropping of rock. Dust and debris filled the air, the fragments catching the sparse light as they fell in a slow, deadly dance. Beerus's eyes gleamed. "Not bad," he remarked. "You managed to harness the chaos. But the true test lies in mastering control amidst constant change." The plateau trembled again, this time with a rhythmic pulse that matched Deku's accelerating heartbeat. The ground split open beneath him, forming a labyrinth of channels that threatened to engulf him. The violent shifting of the terrain forced Deku to rethink his strategy on the fly. He dove into a narrow crevice, the jagged edges scraping his skin, and waited for the unstable earth to settle. Within the shadows of the crevice, Deku's mind raced. Every lesson from UA flashed before him, every training session, every defeat, and every small victory. He recalled the painful scars, the long hours spent pushing his limits, and the unwavering resolve that had brought him this far. In the darkness, he found clarity. Moments later, the tremors subsided, and Deku emerged into an open area that seemed entirely transformed. The landscape now resembled a desolate battlefield, littered with the remnants of shattered stone and glowing fissures that crisscrossed the ground. The sky overhead swirled with an almost hypnotic mix of dark blues and purples, the air thick with anticipation. Beerus descended from his rocky perch and landed with feline grace before Deku. His eyes, now less amused and more calculating, roved over the young hero. "Every trial reveals a piece of your true self," Beerus stated, his voice low and measured. "Yet you remain shackled by your own doubts. Break those chains, or they will become your undoing." Deku's breath came in shallow, deliberate gasps. I won't fail," he whispered, the promise laced with both defiance and desperation. He raised his hand, focusing on the energy that still coursed through him from his earlier exertions. The orb of light flickered to life once more, this time with a steadier glow. He coaxed it to hover before him, molding it with careful, deliberate motions. The orb pulsed as Deku's control deepened, and he sent it spiraling toward a distant fissure. It collided with the raw energy of the churning earth, triggering an explosion that sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. Dust swirled in the aftermath, the cacophony of crumbling rock and sizzling energy mingling into a symphony of destruction. Beerus nodded slowly. "Your progress is evident. You begin to understand that power is not merely an extension of your body, it is an embodiment of your will." His tone was neither harsh nor encouraging, it simply was. "But mastery demands sacrifice. Each step forward requires you to confront the darkest corners of your resolve." A sudden, sharp crack cut through the heavy air. Deku's eyes snapped upward to see a massive slab of stone teetering on the edge of a precipice. It swung precariously, as if drawn by an unseen hand, and began its descent toward him. Without a moment's hesitation, Deku thrust his arms out, summoning the energy he had painstakingly nurtured. The orb coalesced into a barrier, a shimmering shield of light that intercepted the falling stone with a resounding impact. The collision sent splinters of rock scattering across the ground. Deku staggered backward, his body trembling with the strain. He locked eyes with Beerus, whose expression now mingled approval with a trace of concern. "You must learn to balance aggression with caution," Beerus advised, his voice resonant and precise. In battle, every move carries consequence. To wield your power is to bear its weight. For a long moment neither spoke. The silence pulsed with the aftermath of the explosion, a reminder that even in training, every action bore its mark. Deku's fingers flexed, and he felt a surge of determination mingle with the pain of exertion. His body ached, yet every fiber vibrated with the promise of untapped strength. "Teach me," Deku said at last, his voice steady but edged with urgency. "I want to learn, not just to survive, but to control this power, to make it mine." Beerus regarded him silently for a heartbeat, then nodded imperceptibly. "Very well," he said. "Focus not on the fear of failure, but on the precision of each movement. Your power is a tool. Do not let it rule you." He strode to a nearby outcrop and gestured expansively. "We will now attempt a different exercise. In this arena, the elements will shift unpredictably. You must adapt on the fly. Think of it as a dance with destruction." Deku followed, his gaze fixed on the unpredictable horizon. The ground trembled once again, this time conjuring a storm of razor-sharp crystals that erupted from the earth, glinting with lethal intent. Deku's pulse quickened. He ducked behind a fallen monolith, heart pounding as the crystalline shards sliced through the air. Each shard sang a high, metallic note as it passed by, the sound a constant reminder of his precarious situation. "React, Deku!" Beerus's voice boomed over the tumult. "Every second counts. Trust your instincts." Deku inhaled sharply, his eyes narrowing as he gauged the trajectory of the shards. He sprang from cover, pivoting swiftly to avoid a barrage of lethal fragments. He extended his hand, summoning a new surge of energy to create a shimmering veil that deflected the onslaught. The veil trembled under the relentless assault, but it held, barely. The impact of the shards on the barrier was not silent. Each collision reverberated through Deku's bones, a staccato beat that pounded in time with his racing heart. He advanced cautiously, balancing offense with defense. With each calculated step, he grew more adept at reading the chaotic patterns of the storm. The crystalline shards slowed, their relentless assault easing as Deku began to weave through them with an emerging fluidity. A laugh, low and almost amused, echoed from behind him. Deku spun around, finding Beerus leaning casually against a jagged pillar of rock. "Not bad, Deku. But don't get complacent. You must learn to anticipate not just the obvious, but the subtle shifts in your environment." Deku's breath came in ragged gasps, and he nodded. "I see it now. It's like a rhythm. The chaos has its own tempo, and if I can sync with it, I can control it." His eyes glistened with both exertion and a burgeoning understanding. The chaotic dance of shards, the unpredictable tremors of the earth, even the searing heat that had once threatened to overwhelm him, all these elements began to form a pattern, a challenge he was slowly learning to master. Beerus pushed off from the rock and approached Deku, his steps measured and predatory. "Your potential is undeniable, but potential alone does not win battles. You must learn to channel your energy with both precision and heart. Every move you make shapes your destiny." The words, simple yet laden with meaning, resonated deep within Deku. For years he had fought to prove himself in controlled environments, honing his skills in training halls and simulated battles. But here, in the crucible of destruction, he faced the raw, untamed force of his own abilities. The landscape around him transformed into both an adversary and a mentor, a living canvas upon which his destiny was being painted. As the crystalline storm subsided, the plateau shifted once more. The ground split open to reveal a chasm of swirling, luminescent energy. The colors bled into one another in a mesmerizing display of light and darkness. Beerus gestured toward the chasm. "Now for your final test," he declared. "Cross that void. Do it using only your newly acquired skills, and do not falter." Deku's eyes narrowed at the sight. The chasm pulsed with a silent threat, its depths hidden in shifting shadows. His mind raced. This was not just a test of power, but one of will. The void represented every uncertainty he had ever faced, every moment of self-doubt that had plagued him since he was a child. But now, in this moment, he had a chance to rewrite his fate. He stepped to the edge of the chasm, feeling the raw energy of the void pulse beneath his feet. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to cling to the safety of solid ground. Yet the memory of Beerus's stern instruction and his own burning desire to become more than he was propelled him forward. Deku inhaled deeply, centering himself. He summoned the energy that had flowed through him in every exercise, every dodge, every controlled burst of light. The orb that had once flickered hesitantly now burned with steady intensity at his fingertips. With deliberate, measured movements, he extended his arms and propelled himself forward. For a suspended moment, time fractured. Deku soared above the chasm, the void swirling beneath him like an abyss of forgotten dreams and whispered fears. His body twisted in the air, every movement deliberate. In that suspended moment, he felt the raw, unfiltered power of his own resolve. The air rushed past him, every second stretched into an eternity. Below, the chasm seemed to murmur threats and promises in a language older than time. Deku's eyes remained fixed on the far side, a narrow ledge of solid ground that promised both safety and the next step in his evolution. As he neared the ledge, his concentration honed every fiber of his being. He reached out with a surge of energy, gripping the edge with trembling fingers. For an instant, he hung suspended between the unknown depths below and the promise of a new horizon above. Then, with a final, decisive pull, Deku hauled himself onto the ledge. His legs buckled under the strain, and he collapsed against the rough stone, gasping for air. The exertion was overwhelming, yet every muscle vibrated with the thrill of having conquered the impossible. He lay there for a moment, the world around him falling into a hushed stillness as he tried to catch his breath. Beerus stepped forward, his eyes glinting with a mixture of appraisal and unspoken challenge. "You crossed the void," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. "That was not merely physical. Your spirit leaped over the chasm of your own doubts. But this is only the beginning." Deku managed a weak smile, his voice raw with both exhaustion and pride. "I understand. There's so much more to learn." Beerus's gaze sharpened, and he stepped closer. "Power is not a simple path, Deku. Each victory, each moment of triumph, brings with it a shadow. The lessons you learn here will shape the battles you face outside this arena, battles that will test not only your strength but your very identity." As the arena's shifting landscape began to settle once more, Deku's mind raced with the magnitude of what he had just experienced. The training had been brutal, each challenge designed not to break him, but to force him to see the limits of his own resolve and then shatter them. In the heat of that crucible, he had glimpsed the raw essence of his power, and the responsibility that came with it. Beerus regarded Deku with a cool detachment that belied the intensity of their encounter. "Remember this moment," he said. "Remember the heat that seared away your doubts and the void that forced you to confront your fears. The journey ahead will be fraught with challenges that demand more than just brute strength. They will ask you to question who you are and what you stand for." Deku rose unsteadily to his feet, his body trembling with fatigue but burning with a new, undeniable clarity. His eyes met Beerus's, and in that silent exchange, a pact was forged, a promise that he would push past every barrier, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. The skies above the plateau deepened, and the distant rumble of a storm hinted at challenges yet to come. The arena, a realm of brutal beauty and unyielding power, seemed to hold its breath as if anticipating the next chapter in Deku's transformation. "Rest now," Beerus instructed as he turned away, his tone softening ever so slightly. "The fires of battle may have subsided for now, but they will ignite anew soon enough. Use this time to recover, to reflect on the lessons learned. Tomorrow we begin again, and next you will face challenges that will test every fiber of your being." Deku watched as Beerus's form receded into the shifting shadows of the plateau, leaving him alone with the remnants of the day's trials. The cool night air washed over him, mingling with the lingering heat of the training. He sank to the rough stone, his mind awash with a turbulent mix of exhaustion, exhilaration, and resolve. Every bruise and every ache in his body whispered of the journey ahead, a journey where power and sacrifice, light and darkness, would intertwine in a dance that defied simple definitions. In that moment of solitude, Deku realized that his training was not merely a means to an end. It was a crucible in which his very soul was being remade. He closed his eyes briefly, the sounds of the night, a distant wind, the quiet hum of residual energy, melding into a steady cadence. In the silence, he vowed to himself that he would embrace the chaos, harness the raw, untamed power that surged within him, and face the future with unwavering resolve. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, and the lessons of this day would echo in every challenge he would face. As the darkness deepened and the night stretched on, Deku's mind simmered with the promise of what was to come, a promise that the trials of today were merely a prelude to the battles that lay ahead. In the distance, the first murmurs of a new storm began to build, subtle vibrations in the fabric of the universe hinting at a threat that had been gathering beyond the horizon. Deku's eyes snapped open, his heart quickening at the sound of a distant rumble. The silence was broken by the soft murmur of shifting energy, a reminder that while the training had ended for now, the war between order and chaos was far from over. He rose slowly, wincing as his body protested each movement. Yet in every ache, every burn, there was a fierce joy, a realization that he was no longer the hesitant boy he once was. The fires of this crucible had begun to forge something new, something both powerful and unpredictable. As Deku began his slow walk back toward the remnants of a makeshift shelter, a small alcove carved into the rock where he could rest, his thoughts churned. The training had stripped away layers of his former self, revealing a raw core of determination and fear. It was a baptism by fire, and he knew that each trial had been designed not to comfort him, but to force him to evolve. He paused at the edge of the shelter, leaning against the rough stone. The landscape around him seemed to pulse with the energy of a world in flux, each ripple in the air a reminder that nothing stayed constant. In that shifting environment, Deku felt both vulnerable and powerful. Every lesson learned, every challenge met, had carved a new notch in his soul, preparing him for the inevitable confrontations that loomed on the horizon. "Deku!" A voice echoed from the darkness beyond the shelter, halting his thoughts. He turned to see a shadow emerging, a fellow trainee from UA, who had been unexpectedly drawn into this cosmic crucible. The newcomer's eyes were wide, their expression a mix of awe and trepidation. "I heard the explosions, the energy surges. Are you all right?" Deku's lips tightened into a small, appreciative smile. "I am," he said, his voice steady despite the fatigue. "This is only the beginning. If you're coming with me, be prepared to face your deepest fears." The trainee's eyes flickered with a mix of determination and uncertainty. I'm ready. I won't let this place break me." Deku offered a nod of reassurance, then glanced back toward the distant horizon where the storm's whispers began to swell. In that moment, the training plateau transformed from a solitary crucible into a shared arena of ambition and resilience. The burden of destiny no longer felt like a solitary trial. It was a collective challenge that would bind those who dared to dream of transcending their limits. Behind Deku, Beerus's distant figure receded into the shifting shadows. His parting words had lingered in the air like a benediction and a warning. The relentless training, the dance with destruction, and the lessons etched into every scar and every bruise were all stepping stones toward a future that promised both glory and despair. Deku's gaze drifted back to the darkened horizon. The universe pulsed with unspoken threats and opportunities. In the vast interplay of light and darkness, he sensed that his journey was far from over, that the next trial would emerge from the very chaos he had begun to tame. As the chill of the night deepened and the distant storm gathered momentum, Deku felt the stirrings of both dread and hope. His journey had taken a decisive turn. He had been baptized by fire, and now he carried that flame within him. It burned with a fierce intensity that promised to illuminate the darkest paths ahead, even as it threatened to consume him if left unchecked. Deku stepped away from the shelter, his resolve hardening with every measured stride. Each step carried the weight of responsibility, the memory of every drop of sweat and every moment of pain. The path forward was uncertain, marked by trials yet to be imagined, but he would meet them head-on. The crucible of training had stripped away his doubts, revealing a core that could only grow stronger with each new challenge. In the quiet moments before sleep, as the energy of the plateau slowly subsided into a deceptive calm, Deku's thoughts churned with plans and possibilities. He replayed every moment of the day's training, the roar of flames, the crash of falling boulders, the slicing sound of crystalline shards, and he recognized that each moment had prepared him for the battles to come. A final glance at the turbulent horizon reminded him that the world was never truly at rest. There were forces gathering in the shadows, threats that would test not only his physical strength but the very essence of who he was. In that subtle promise of looming conflict, Deku found a spark of determination. The training had been relentless, but the true test of his power and his resolve still lay ahead. As he finally allowed himself a moment of rest under the sparse shelter of the plateau, Deku closed his eyes, already anticipating the dawn and the trials it would bring. His mind churned with visions of the next challenge, a challenge that would force him to reconcile the destructive power he had learned to wield with the ideals that defined him as a hero. In the deep silence of the night, as the energy of the training grounds slowly faded into a quiet murmur, a sense of foreboding settled over the plateau. Somewhere beyond the reach of even Beerus's keen perception, a new threat was gathering strength, its presence hinted at by the restless winds and the shifting shadows. It was a promise of chaos yet to come, a promise that would soon propel Deku into a battle not just for his own soul, but for the fate of the world he had vowed to protect. And so, as the darkness held its breath, Deku's journey continued, a journey defined by fire, sacrifice, and the unyielding pursuit of mastery. The echoes of the day's trials resonated in every heartbeat, and each breath he drew affirmed the truth that he was no longer the boy who had first stepped onto the battlefield of his destiny. He was a warrior forged in the crucible of destruction, ready to confront the next storm that the universe dared to unleash. The future remained cloaked in uncertainty, each moment pregnant with both peril and possibility. But for now, as Deku drifted into a restless sleep beneath the watchful eyes of a shifting cosmos, he carried with him the raw, unyielding promise that the path ahead, however treacherous, would lead him to the truth of his power and perhaps to the redemption of his spirit. A bleak drizzle soaked the streets of Muzurifu, the rain slicing through the neon haze with an almost deliberate insistence. Under the pallid glow of streetlights, the city's edges blurred into murky silhouettes, each step along the cracked pavement echoing against the oppressive silence of midnight. Deku's footsteps, measured and resolute, punctuated the stillness as he patrolled alone, a solitary guardian forced into a role he had never sought, his every muscle primed by the recent, brutal tutelage of Beerus. Deku's eyes scanned the deserted urban labyrinth, their once bright spark now shadowed by a burden he carried deep within. The power that surged beneath his skin, a tempest of raw, unchecked energy, remained a constant reminder of the godlike force that had anointed him. Each raindrop on his face, each gust of cold wind, seemed to whisper both caution and challenge. His mind, ever the battlefield of conflicting ideals, churned with memories of that fateful encounter and the relentless training that followed. Even now, as the rain mingled with the residue of cosmic energy on his skin, Deku wrestled with a gnawing uncertainty. Would his newfound might serve as a shield for those he cherished, or would it ultimately consume him from within? A low, almost imperceptible vibration quivered beneath the concrete, a prelude to an event that Deku could neither predict nor ignore. He paused, instinctively clenching his fists. His senses, honed to an edge by both mortal training and celestial influence, tingled with an alertness that bordered on hyper-awareness. Somewhere in the distance, amid the labyrinthine alleyways, a presence stirred. Not the familiar murmur of petty criminals or the scuffle of misguided youths, but something altogether other, a force that was neither entirely physical nor wholly intangible. The first sign of intrusion came not as a shout or a scream, but as an aberration in the ambient light, a ripple, like heat rising from asphalt on a summer day, yet distinctly otherworldly. Deku's breath caught as the distortion wavered in front of him, splitting the rainy air with a subtle, unnatural shimmer. He tightened his grip on his forearm protector, his knuckles whitening in the dim glow. A few paces away, slumped against a graffitied wall, a fellow UA student stirred from uneasy slumber. Achiko Uraraka blinked awake, her wide eyes reflecting the strange luminescence. "Izuku?" she called softly, her voice barely audible over the patter of rain. Her tone held equal parts concern and uncertainty, a plea for reassurance in the growing darkness. Deku offered a curt nod. "I'm here. Stay close." His voice, low and steady, belied the mounting tension beneath his calm exterior. The duo's unspoken pact to protect one another had deepened since the day Beerus chose him, even as that divine blessing festered with consequences either could fully comprehend. They advanced together, cautious steps measured in tandem. The city's back alleys morphed into a labyrinth of narrow corridors, where shadows writhed and whispered secrets. Each echo of their footsteps seemed to awaken a slumbering memory of forgotten fears. As they neared the source of the distortion, Deku's heightened senses caught fleeting movements, slivers of darkness darting along the periphery of his vision. "Something's not right," Achiko murmured, her voice a blend of trepidation and resolve. She clutched her support gear tighter, every muscle primed for action. Deku nodded, his gaze fixed on the undulating mirage. "We need to be alert. I can't explain it, but it feels invasive." His words were clipped, the cadence of a soldier preparing for the unknown. Before they could retreat into safer ground, a sudden burst of kinetic energy shattered the quiet. A figure emerged from the ripple, a tall, gaunt silhouette with skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The newcomer moved with a fluid grace that defied gravity, each step measured yet unpredictable, as if guided by a purpose beyond mortal comprehension. Its eyes, dark and fathomless, flickered with an intelligence that sent a chill racing down Deku's spine. What are you?" Deku demanded, his tone firm, the adrenaline in his veins igniting his determination to protect his companion. He squared his shoulders, summoning the latent power that surged within him, ready to channel it against this unknown threat. The figure's lips curved in a semblance of amusement, though no true smile graced its features. "I am a herald of change," it intoned, its voice an echo of both menace and sorrow. "A fragment of the inevitable." Its words, cryptic and measured, floated in the air like a challenge. The enemy's form shimmered again, momentarily revealing a mosaic of scars and luminescent markings that hinted at origins far removed from Earth. Achiko shifted behind Deku, her eyes darting between the mysterious figure and the wavering shadows around them. "We don't want any trouble," she said, her voice quavering yet defiant. "Just tell us what you're doing here." The figure's head tilted slightly, as if amused by her plea. "Trouble is merely the prelude to evolution. I come not to destroy, but to awaken, a catalyst for the transformation that awaits your kind." Its words were laced with an enigmatic finality, leaving as much ambiguity as clarity. The presence of this being, so out of place in their familiar urban sprawl, twisted the very air around them, leaving Deku with a sensation akin to standing on the precipice of an unseen chasm. Deku's instincts flared. "Awaken? That's a dangerous game. We're not pawns in your cosmic chess." His tone sharpened with the weight of his responsibility, a duty not just to protect his friends, but to uphold the fragile order of the world he had sworn to defend. A tense silence enveloped the scene, broken only by the persistent rain and the distant hum of the city. The stranger's gaze flickered, and it seemed as though it weighed the sincerity in Deku's words before responding in a tone that was almost sorrowful. "Every pawn has its destiny," it murmured, "and every king must one day choose between order and oblivion." Before Deku could probe further, the stranger melted back into the shifting distortion, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions and an unsettling quiet. The ripples in the air receded slowly, as if mourning their brief existence. For a long, heavy moment, nothing stirred save for the sound of rain mingling with the quiet tension that now coiled tightly around the two heroes. Achiko's hands trembled as she gripped her support gauntlets. "What did it mean by catalyst?" she whispered, voice barely rising above the rainfall. "Do you think it was sent by someone else? Or something else?" Deku exhaled slowly, the weight of the encounter pressing upon him. "I'm not sure," he admitted, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the murky depths of the alleyway. "But it feels like we're caught in a game whose rules we don't understand yet." His words trailed off, the unspoken fear hanging between them, a fear of the unknown consequences that might soon cascade into chaos. They resumed their patrol, more cautiously now. Every flicker of movement, every shadow's twist along the rain-soaked walls, seemed pregnant with menace. As they approached a corner where the streetlights sputtered in defiance of the storm, Deku sensed that the encounter was far from an isolated anomaly. His internal radar buzzed with the hum of latent energies, the kind that resonated with the cosmic force he had reluctantly embraced. Without warning, a second ripple shattered the monotony of the rain. This time, it tore through the night like a jagged scar, revealing not a single figure but a small cadre of shapes emerging from the darkness. Their forms were fluid, indistinct at first, but as they coalesced, it became apparent that these were not ordinary criminals or wayward wanderers. They were emissaries of the same ominous force that had sent the solitary herald. Deku signaled silently to Achiko. "Stay behind me," he ordered, voice resolute despite the palpable dread that tightened his chest. His gaze swept over the newly formed group. They moved with a coordinated precision that suggested they communicated without words, a dance of shadows and whispers. One of the figures stepped forward, its movements deliberate. In a low, almost respectful tone, it addressed Deku. "Champion, your trial has begun." The word, champion, echoed in the rain, a stark reminder of the destiny thrust upon him by Beerus, and now, seemingly, by forces beyond even the god of destruction's design. Deku's fist clenched, a mix of anger and determination flaring in his eyes. "Who are you to decide my trial?" he countered, his voice steady but edged with defiance. The words spilled out with a conviction that belied his inner uncertainty. The group shifted, the murmur of their voices rising to a low, dissonant chant, a ritualistic cadence that resonated with something ancient and foreboding. The air thickened as the emissaries advanced, and Deku raised his hand, drawing upon the energy that throbbed beneath his skin. Every droplet of rain seemed to electrify the charged atmosphere around him. "I didn't ask for this," he declared, his tone a blend of authority and reluctant acceptance. "But I won't back down from defending those who need me." A tense pause followed, filled only by the staccato rhythm of falling rain. Then, as if in response to his declaration, the lead emissary's eyes glinted with something akin to pity. "Your resolve is admirable, yet ignorance blinds you. The balance has shifted. Forces long dormant stir in the void. The threat we herald is not merely one of destruction, it is the harbinger of an evolution that will reshape existence." Before Deku could press for clarification, a sudden surge of kinetic force erupted from the shadows. One of the emissaries lunged forward with a speed that defied mortal limits, its form blurring into a streak of darkness aimed straight for Deku's chest. Instinct snapped into focus. Deku pivoted, narrowly deflecting the attack with a burst of his own power. The collision sent shockwaves through the rain-soaked pavement, scattering debris and splintering concrete. "Deku, behind you!" Achiko cried, her voice slicing through the chaos. She darted to his side, her posture rigid with resolve as she prepared to counter any further assault. The alley erupted into a cacophony of strikes and parries. Deku's mind raced, calculating angles and distances in a fluid dance of survival. Each blow he parried with a measured precision, each counterattack forged in the crucible of his new abilities. The emissaries, though otherworldly in appearance, fought with a cold efficiency that left no room for error. Their movements were a dark ballet, a choreography of lethal grace that underscored their purpose. Deku's breath came in sharp, staccato bursts as he engaged one of the attackers. His limbs, still adjusting to the magnitude of power surging within him, moved with an urgency that bordered on desperation. He could feel the strain of every strike, every dodge, as if the very fabric of his being was being tested against forces beyond human comprehension. Amid the chaos, the lead emissary observed the battle with an inscrutable expression. Its voice, though distant amid the din of clashing bodies, reached Deku with a resonance that was both commanding and mournful. "Every challenge shapes the path ahead, champion. Embrace the conflict, for in its crucible, truth is forged." Deku gritted his teeth. "I'm not here to be your pawn," he retorted, his voice rising above the tumult. His words rang out like a rallying cry, a declaration of independence against the tide of inevitability. "If this is the trial you've chosen for me, then I will face it head-on." A savage rhythm took over as the battle escalated. Each movement, each clash, was rendered in a blur of focused intent. The rain seemed to quicken, as if nature itself responded to the surge of energy in the narrow alley. For every emissary that surged forward, Deku met it with calculated counterattacks, a harmonious blend of instinct and the ferocious training imposed by Beerus. Sparks flew as fists collided with otherworldly energy, and the ground beneath them shuddered under the impact of their confrontation. Achiko's presence remained a steady beacon in the maelstrom. She navigated the fray with a balance of agility and grit, her support gear glowing as she managed to intercept a particularly vicious strike aimed at Deku. "We can do this!" she shouted, her voice a burst of hope amid the oppressive gloom. Her words, though small against the vast force arrayed against them, provided a measure of strength that spurred Deku to push beyond his limits. In one particularly vicious exchange, Deku found himself locked in a duel with an emissary whose movements defied prediction. The creature's limbs twisted in unnatural angles, striking with an elegance that belied its lethal intent. Deku countered with every ounce of his training and determination, each parry and thrust a testament to the precarious balance between human will and cosmic might. A collision of energy erupted as Deku unleashed a concentrated burst of power. The emissary staggered, its form momentarily dissolving into a haze of fragmented light before reconstituting with a snarl that resonated with the promise of further conflict. "Your potential is boundless," it hissed, its voice laced with both admiration and warning. "But potential alone will not save you from the inevitable descent into chaos." The words struck Deku like a physical blow. In that moment, the inner battle raged as fiercely as the physical one. Every doubt, every lingering insecurity about the price of his divine power, surged to the forefront. Yet amid the torrent of thoughts, a single truth crystallized in his mind: to protect those he loved, he could not retreat. Even if the enemy heralded evolution through destruction, he would not be complicit in a fate he had not chosen. Drawing upon the depths of his resolve, Deku pushed forward. "I choose my own destiny," he declared, voice resolute and unwavering. Each word vibrated with the strength of his conviction. In that instant, the chaotic dance of combat seemed to falter, as if the very fabric of the moment hung suspended on his declaration. For a heartbeat, time slowed. The emissaries hesitated, their coordinated assault faltering as they registered the unyielding defiance in Deku's eyes. The lead emissary, its gaze locked onto the determined hero, stepped back into the shifting gloom. "Then your trial is far from over," it intoned, the cadence of its voice carrying a promise of greater trials to come. "You have only scratched the surface of the storm that awaits." With that, the remaining emissaries dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that was more ominous than the clamor of battle. The rain, now falling in a steadier rhythm, seemed to wash away the immediate echoes of violence, but the weight of what had transpired lingered in every damp droplet. Deku, chest heaving and eyes burning with a mixture of adrenaline and resolve, surveyed the empty alley. Achiko stood by him, her face etched with concern and relief, though either could shake the impression that the night had only deepened the mystery surrounding the threat they now faced. Deku knelt to steady his breathing, his hands trembling as he recalled the precise moment when destiny had nearly overpowered him. Every bruise and every scar that marked his body served as a tangible reminder of the conflict between the hero he once was and the champion he was forced to become. "This isn't over," he murmured, more to himself than to Achiko, his voice barely audible amid the persistent rainfall. "It's only getting worse." Achiko's eyes met his, soft and resolute. "Then we have to be ready," she replied, the determination in her tone underscoring her unwavering support. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Her words carried the quiet strength of someone who understood that even in the darkest nights, solidarity could kindle a spark of hope. As they rose from the debris-strewn ground, a chill that had nothing to do with the rain seeped into Deku's bones. The encounter left him with a lingering question that gnawed at his core: what was the true nature of the trial he was facing? The emissaries' cryptic hints, the coordinated assault, and the echo of ancient prophecies all pointed to a threat that transcended the mere physical, an upheaval that threatened the very essence of existence. The city resumed its indifferent hum as the two moved cautiously down the slick street, each step measured, every shadow a potential harbinger of further danger. In the distance, the neon signs flickered with an erratic pulse, as though they too were unsettled by the events unfolding beneath them. A stray siren wailed, its mournful note a stark reminder that even in moments of calm, disaster lay in wait. Deku's thoughts churned as he recalled the emissary's final words. "Your trial is far from over." The phrase reverberated in his mind like a persistent drumbeat, echoing with the promise of an escalating conflict. His newly acquired powers, once a symbol of hope and a means to protect, now felt like a double-edged sword, a beacon that might draw the darkness closer with every beat of his heart. The urban labyrinth they traversed soon gave way to a deserted industrial district. Abandoned warehouses and rusted machinery loomed in the periphery, their decaying structures offering little comfort against the encroaching night. Here, in this forgotten quarter, the world seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Shadows stretched longer, and every gust of wind carried with it the faint echo of distant battles. Deku paused before a battered metal door, its surface pitted by time and neglect. "We should regroup here," he suggested, his voice low and cautious as he pushed the door open. The interior revealed a vast, empty space where echoes danced in the gloom, a temporary sanctuary that felt as unstable as the alliances he now had to forge. The silence inside was profound, punctuated only by the drip of water and the occasional creak of settling metal. Inside, the dim light revealed traces of past occupancy. Old posters peeling from the walls, shards of broken glass scattered across the floor. It was a place that bore witness to both abandonment and resilience, much like the heroes who dared to defy fate. Deku led Ochako to a secluded corner and began checking their gear, his hands steady but his mind restless. "We need to figure out who or what sent those emissaries," Ochako said quietly, her tone analytical despite the tremor of unease in her voice. "There's something deliberate about this attack. It wasn't random." Deku nodded, his gaze lingering on a spot near the shattered window where a faint, residual glow still clung to the air. "There's a purpose here," he agreed, voice thoughtful. "Every detail feels orchestrated. The way they moved, their calculated strikes. It wasn't chaos, it was precision." A distant rumble echoed from the depths of the warehouse, and both heroes tensed. Deku's instincts screamed a warning. "Stay alert," he instructed, moving toward the source of the sound. Each footstep echoed in the cavernous space, the sound bouncing off metal beams and concrete walls like a drumbeat of impending danger. In the gloom, a figure emerged from behind a stack of old crates. It was a young man, clad in a patched-up UA jacket and holding a handheld scanner that flickered with data. His eyes darted around, and when they met Deku's, a flicker of relief passed across his face. "Izuku, thank God," he breathed, voice hushed. "I'm Todoroki. I heard the commotion over the comms and came as soon as I could." Deku relaxed slightly, though he maintained a cautious stance. "Todoroki, what did you see out there?" he asked, his tone measured as he scanned the newcomer's face for any signs of distress. The young man's gaze shifted to the darkened corners of the warehouse before he spoke. "It wasn't just one attack," he explained, voice low and steady. "I intercepted fragments of transmissions. There are multiple factions at play, cosmic entities stirring old energies and modern forces trying to harness that power for their own gain." His words came in rapid succession, as if trying to convey a panorama of impending doom in a single breath. Ochiko's brow furrowed. "So you're saying we're dealing with something bigger than any villain we've encountered before?" she asked, voice tinged with both wonder and dread. Todoroki's eyes hardened as he replied. "Bigger and far more dangerous. I've been tracking anomalies since I got here, disturbances that suggest a collision between dimensions. The emissaries we faced are just the first wave. I suspect there's a nexus point somewhere, a convergence that could tip the scales in favor of total annihilation if left unchecked." Deku's pulse quickened, the gravity of the situation weighing on him. "Then our trial isn't merely about proving ourselves in battle," he murmured. "It's about preventing something catastrophic." His tone carried a stark clarity, a declaration of duty that left no room for hesitation. A tense silence fell over the trio as the distant hum of machinery intermingled with the soft patter of rain from outside. Every creak of the old building, every shift of the shadows, resonated with the promise of more conflict. Deku's mind raced through scenarios and strategies, each more daunting than the last. The training he'd endured, the celestial fire that burned within him, now felt like both a gift and a curse. A burden that tethered him to a destiny that was rapidly spiraling out of control. Todoroki continued, voice measured yet urgent. "I've pinpointed a potential lead, a facility on the outskirts of the city where the disturbances are strongest. If we can secure it, we might find clues to the source of these anomalies. But we have to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more time our adversaries have to consolidate their power." Deku exchanged a glance with Ochako. Their shared determination was palpable, a silent vow that they would confront the encroaching darkness head-on. "Then we go," Deku said decisively, his tone brooking no argument. If there's a nexus point, we need to find it before it draws in everything we know. With the plan forming in their minds, the trio gathered their equipment and left the relative safety of the warehouse. Outside, the rain had lightened to a persistent mist, the city's neon lights reflecting in rivulets along the slick pavement. The industrial district, a canvas of rust and decay, stretched before them like a labyrinth of secrets waiting to be unraveled. They moved with purpose through the deserted streets, their senses attuned to every shift in the atmosphere. The tension was palpable, a collective heartbeat in the darkness, each step forward a defiance against the inevitable tide of fate. As they neared the outskirts of Mizudafu, the urban sprawl gave way to barren fields and crumbling infrastructure, a stark reminder that progress and decay often walked side by side. A dilapidated building, its walls scarred by time and neglect, marked the entrance to the facility Todoroki had mentioned. The structure loomed ominously, its broken windows like vacant eyes that had witnessed too much. Deku's eyes narrowed as he approached, the energy in the air crackling with a volatile mix of dread and anticipation. Inside, the corridor was dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. The silence pressed in on them, each echo of their footsteps a reminder of the stakes at hand. In the distance, a low, mechanical hum vibrated through the concrete walls, a sound that hinted at machinery far more advanced than the ruined infrastructure suggested. Deku's hand hovered over the door handle as he exchanged a brief nod with Todoroki and Achiko. "Stay sharp," he whispered, voice barely rising above the mechanical drone. "There's no telling what we might find inside." The door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space that stretched into shadow. Industrial equipment lay strewn about in disarray, and amidst the scattered debris, strange symbols were etched into the walls, a language of cosmic significance that Deku recognized only as a fragment of a prophecy too ancient to fully comprehend. The symbols pulsed faintly, as if in sync with the beat of his own heart, sending a shiver down his spine. As they advanced deeper into the facility, the tension mounted with every step. The trio communicated in hushed whispers, their words careful and deliberate. Every corner of the expansive hall felt laden with secrets and silent threats. Deku's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of movement, any indication that the building concealed more than just relics of a bygone era. Then, without warning, the humming grew louder, transforming into a low, resonant vibration that reverberated through the floor. A section of the wall slid open silently, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in a pale, otherworldly light. In the center of the chamber hovered a large, crystalline structure that pulsed with an inner luminescence. Its facets shimmered with colors that defied description, as though capturing fragments of a cosmic spectrum that transcended human perception. Todoroki stepped forward, his voice hushed in awe. This is unlike anything I've ever seen," he said, his tone laced with both scientific curiosity and a deep-seated trepidation. "It's as if the very essence of the cosmos has been distilled into this singular form." Deku's gaze remained fixed on the crystalline structure, the air around it vibrating with raw, latent energy. "It's a nexus," he stated, his voice low and deliberate. "A focal point where the dimensions converge. That must be the source of the disturbances." The words carried the weight of an inevitable conclusion, one that bound them to a fate they could neither escape nor fully understand. Before they could examine it further, a sudden surge of energy erupted from the nexus. The crystalline structure flared with an intense brilliance, and for an instant, the chamber was filled with a cacophony of overlapping sounds, a chorus of voices, echoes of distant battles, and the soft, insistent rhythm of a universal heartbeat. The air itself seemed to tremble, as if reality were straining under the pressure of too many converging forces. A figure materialized at the far end of the chamber, a spectral visage that glowed with an ethereal light. Its features were indistinct, yet its presence exuded an authority that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The figure regarded the intruders with a gaze that penetrated the veil of time and space, and in a voice that resonated with both melancholy and inevitability, it spoke. "Champions of a fragile world, you have trespassed upon the sanctum of the Nexus," it intoned. "Here, the boundaries of existence unravel, and with them, the future is rewritten." Its words, precise and devoid of embellishment, sent a shudder through Deku's core. Deku stepped forward, his resolve hardening as he met the spectral gaze. "We seek answers," he declared, voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. Our world stands on the brink. If you hold the key to the disturbances, then tell us what must be done. The spectral figure inclined its head slowly, as if weighing Deku's plea against the scales of fate. The trial you face is but a fragment of a cosmic rebirth, it said, its tone neither kind nor cruel, simply matter-of-fact. The forces that threaten your reality are ancient and relentless. They hunger for change, for an upheaval that will unseat the old order and usher in an era of transformation. Only those who accept the burden of this new destiny can hope to steer the course of evolution. A heavy silence fell over the chamber, punctuated only by the rhythmic pulsations of the Nexus. Hachiko exchanged a worried glance with Todoroki, while Deku's eyes burned with the determination to protect the fragile hope that still lingered in his heart. Then we choose to stand against that fate, he replied, his words deliberate and resolute. If our destiny is to be written in the flames of conflict, then we will forge a path that preserves what is worth fighting for. The spectral figure's form wavered, its expression inscrutable. Your choice is but the beginning, it said slowly. The shadows that you have witnessed are harbingers of what is to come. The Nexus calls to forces both benevolent and malevolent, and the trial of your champion will soon escalate beyond mortal comprehension. With those final words, the figure began to dissipate, its form scattering into 1,000 motes of light that merged with the pulsing energy of the Nexus. As the chamber dimmed once more, the echoes of the spectral presence lingered like a premonition. Deku felt the gravity of the Nexus's power in his bones, a reminder that the threat they faced was not limited to a single encounter but was part of a vast, unfolding saga, a saga that intertwined destiny, sacrifice, and the precarious balance between creation and destruction. Stepping back from the Nexus, Todoroki's voice broke the silence. We need to document everything, he urged, already reaching for his scanner. These readings, they're unlike anything we've recorded before. This Nexus, it's a conduit for energies that could reshape the world. His tone was clinical, yet beneath the surface lay an unspoken fear of the magnitude of what they had uncovered. Hachiko's gaze drifted between the Nexus and Deku. So, what do we do now? She asked quietly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty swirling in the air. If this Nexus is the source of the disturbances, then understanding it might be our only hope to stop whatever is coming. Deku took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the crystalline structure. We gather what data we can, and then we report back to UA. We need experts who understand this kind of cosmic anomaly, people who can help us decipher its significance. But we also need to prepare ourselves for what lies ahead. The emissaries were just the first wave. There's a storm coming, and we're right in its path. His words hung heavy in the charged air, the tension in the chamber mounting with the realization that the trial had only deepened. The Nexus pulsed with a steady rhythm, a heartbeat that seemed to echo the pulse of the universe itself, a rhythm that promised both creation and inevitable chaos. Outside the facility, the night had grown colder, and the rain had slowed to a persistent drizzle. The journey back through the desolate industrial district felt like a descent into an abyss of foreboding uncertainty. Every step resonated with the weight of unspoken questions and the burden of a destiny not yet fully grasped. The confrontation with the emissaries, the cryptic words of the spectral figure, and the overwhelming presence of the Nexus had all conspired to reshape Deku's understanding of the world he had sworn to protect. As the trio emerged back into the open air, the city loomed on the horizon, a sprawling, indifferent expanse of lights and shadows. In that moment, Deku's heart pounded with a singular resolve. The trial was far from over, and the true test of his champion's mettle lay ahead. The darkness that had descended upon Muzurifu was not an isolated threat, but the prelude to a larger, more complex conflict. A conflict that would demand every ounce of strength, every shred of determination he possessed. Deku's mind churned with thoughts of the Nexus and the spectral warning, each recollection a thread in the tapestry of fate that now bound him to a destiny fraught with peril. He recalled the lead emissary's parting words, the calculated coldness in its tone, and the implicit promise that their next encounter would be even more devastating. The vision of the Nexus, its crystalline beauty juxtaposed against the stark terror of its power, etched itself into his consciousness, a constant reminder that every choice, every action, would have profound consequences. As the trio reached a safe distance from the facility, Todoroki finally broke the silence. "We need to alert UA immediately," he said, his voice steady but heavy with implication. "This isn't just about us, it's about the entire balance of our world. The disturbances are growing stronger, and we must act before the next wave of chaos strikes." Achiko nodded in agreement, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and apprehension. "I'll get in touch with Aizawa and the others," she offered, her tone resolute despite the uncertainty that clouded the horizon. "We can't let this threat escalate without a coordinated response." Deku's gaze drifted back toward the direction of the Nexus, its faint glow a beacon in the darkness. "I'll stay here a little longer to secure any data we can extract," he said, determination lacing every word. "We need every piece of information to understand what we're up against. The trial of my powers isn't over until I know the full extent of what's coming." With that, he turned back toward the facility, each step heavy with the knowledge that he was venturing deeper into a mystery that spanned not just the physical realm, but the very fabric of existence. The rain mingled with his thoughts, every droplet a silent witness to the unfolding drama, a drama that promised no easy answers, only the relentless march of fate. As Deku entered the darkened corridors once more, the suspense of the unknown coiled tightly around him. The distant hum of the Nexus, the residual energy in the air, and the lingering echoes of that spectral voice formed an intricate tapestry of warning and promise. Somewhere within the labyrinth of metal and shadows, the next chapter of his destiny awaited, one that would force him to confront the full measure of his newfound power and the devastating cost it might demand. Every step he took resonated with a grim finality, each heartbeat a countdown to the inevitable collision of forces that had long been dormant beneath the veneer of everyday life. In the silence that followed, Deku's thoughts converged on a single, unyielding truth. The threat was not confined to a single moment or a solitary enemy. It was an evolving storm, and he was its reluctant, yet determined, champion. The corridor stretched on, illuminated only by the erratic flicker of failing lights and the ghostly remnants of cosmic energy that still clung to the walls. Deku's mind, still grappling with the gravity of the Nexus and the warnings of the spectral figure, raced through scenarios of what might come next. Each possibility carried its own set of horrors and hopes, a future that balanced precariously between salvation and annihilation. In that charged moment, as he delved deeper into the heart of the facility, Deku realized that the night had merely set the stage for what would be the most consequential battle of his life. The shadows he had encountered were not just remnants of a singular threat, but the heralds of an unforeseen evolution, one that would test every fiber of his being and force him to redefine the very nature of heroism. And so, with unwavering resolve etched on his face, Deku pressed forward into the unknown, ready to confront the emerging tempest, even as the whispers of destiny promised that the greatest trial was yet to come.